All right, hello. So we're going to continue doing Saint Phanarius and holy and glorious great Martyr Phanarius, the new and revealed life and miracles and supplicatory canon. So this is, as I said before, is a list of people recording their miracles that they experienced with Saint Phanarius in our modern times. So I'm going to paraphrase these stories for my children and grandchildren until they're old enough to do their own reading. So this one's called A Happy Reunion, and it's from a church member from Miami, Florida in 1997. So a few years ago, she was driving an older Greek lady to the airport to meet her grandson, and she hadn't seen him since he was a little baby. And he was now in his late teens, and he came back to America to go to college. It was during the holidays when thousands of people were in Miami from all over the world, and as you can imagine, the airport was packed with people. And I asked her for a description of her grandson, and she had no idea what he looked like. So I waited outside the customs office, and after 2 unsuccessful attempts at finding her grandson, I prayed to Saint Phanarius. And then I went up to a young man, and I'd never seen him before, and I asked him if his name was Vasily, and if he came from Greece. And soon I united him with his grandmother and took him home. A sign from Saint Phanarius. This is in 1997 as well. This is from somebody from Ontario, Canada. I try not to say their names just to protect their privacy, you know. If you want to read the book, you can. You can buy it. This was in March of 1997. There was an Ethiopian man claiming to be an Orthodox Christian, and he went to St. Joseph of Arimathea's church in Toronto, and he asked if he could get some help to pay his rent. He said that if he didn't get any help, he and his family were going to be kicked out to the street. I almost had as much as he needed, but I didn't have quite enough. But this happens quite a bit. So the grateful man asked what he could do in return to pay for the help that he was given, the money. And, you know, I was completely convinced of his honesty and asked him to he offered to do work around the church. So, you know, I believed him. This happened to be Great Lent. There was a young man from Russia, and he had been ordered to do some community service. And the man's father called to see if this Ethiopian man could if this Russian man could do some of that at St. Joseph's Church. And so I accepted his offer, and the young Russian came and cheerfully did his duties at the church. So I couldn't think of anything that the Ethiopian could do because I had all the help I needed. It did occur to me, however, that if the convent, he could do some help with the framing and erecting of a beautiful sign that had made for the church and had been donated in memory of Father Xenophon, who had reposed at the Holy Transfiguration Monastery in Brookline, Massachusetts. So the Ethiopian eagerly agreed to take the sign home with him and to be in touch. He promised he would try to keep whatever costs it would require to a minimum. So the sign was wrapped up, and the man was escorted to the subway station. And he promised to get the sign done by Pascha, Easter. but the sign never showed up for another 6 months. I was then called for more money for lumber and electrical parts for the total of $310. And I thought how happy everyone would be to see this sign with lighting welcoming them to St. John's or St. Joseph's Orthodox Church on Pascha night or Easter night. So I gave them the money, but I was given a false address and phone number. Pascha came and went, and by the Feast of the Ascension, I finally concluded that I'd been ripped off. I prayed before the icon of St. Phanarius, the finder of lost things, but I admit half-heartedly, feeling that this was not really something he was going to do or take care of. I filed a report with the police department and explained that we just wanted to get the sign back. We weren't interested in prosecuting him. We just wanted to get the sign back, or maybe the return of the lost funds. A lot of months went by, and then all of a sudden, this police officer informed me that this guy had been found. This Ethiopian man had been found, and they found the sign. But I felt ashamed that I didn't have more faith in St. Phanarius. So we were all very happy at the finding of the sign. We lost, in addition, a lost wallet, credit cards, a driver's license, keys, etc. have all been found through the intercessions of St. Phanarius. So there's no more half-hearted prayers for St. Phanarius to help out. So that was from St. Joseph of Arimathea Orthodox Church in Ontario, Canada. I'll try to make these about 20 minutes or less. That way, I like to listen to YouTube videos myself while I work. My job is a janitor, and if they're too short, it's not worth listening to because then I have to stop and find another video. So I'll go about 20 minutes or so. All right, maybe in your little hick town, but not in New York City, is the title of this one. This is from Lowell, Massachusetts. So about 9 years ago, I got a phone call from my mom. She was real upset. Dad's car had gotten stolen, and he wasn't going to be able to come see me, and the family was devastated. The car wasn't insured for theft, and it was the only one they had. I told my mom not to worry about it. If there was anyone that could find the car, it'd be St. Phanarius. So I hung up the phone and went straight to my icon corner and prayed and promised to bake Phanarupita as soon as the car was found. A couple minutes later, my sister called, and I could tell she was upset. And she replied, my sister said to me, quote, "Mom just told me that you're going to pray to St. Phanarius to find our car," end quote. And she was getting more agitated with every word. She says, quote, "What, are you stupid? Do you know how many cars get stolen in the city of New York every day and what kind of shape the cars are in when they're found? And you think that by praying to St. Phanarius they're going to find our car?" End quote. By the time she got to this point in the conversation, she was pretty hysterical. So I didn't even bother to argue. Quote, "Listen to me," she continued, and see if you can understand what I'm about to say. St. Phanarius does not work in the city of New York. Maybe he comes to your little hick town, but not in New York. Sometimes I wonder about you, end quote. She slammed down the phone and hung up on me. I kind of chuckled as I hung up or got off the phone and thought to myself, well, we'll just have to show Miss Know-It-All, won't we, Mrs. St. Phanarius? So 2 days later, my mom called. She said, "Start your baking. Thanks to St. Phanarius, the police found your father's car somewhere in the city untouched. Not one thing was missing. And before I hung up, there was someone here who wants to say something." It was her sister. She said in a very soft voice, quote, "What exactly do you say when you pray to St. Phanarius?" End quote. Oh, that's a great story. I love these. So that was 1992. A lot of people, think, I don't know. I grew up in the Protestant church, and there was always a sense that the Bible was once upon a time, sort of a thing. Kind of, it was for that time period, but it's different now. Well, that's the thing about Orthodox Christianity, is there's a continual thread from that time to the present that hasn't changed in the teachings or the practices of the Orthodox Christian Church. And so there isn't that disconnect. So the miracles of the Old Testament and the New Testament, they're still present today. We got 10 minutes in? Okay, let's go for another one. He will guard you all your days. So my great uncle, Orthodoxos, lived with our family in Phanarius, area of Constantinople. It's an area in Constantinople. Orthodoxos, that's an interesting name. He was a boatman to Onassis at that time. He would ship people from Onassis, ships or the yacht, to the port of Constantinople. And on one Sunday, he took my great-grandmother and his niece for a boat ride. And during this outing, his sister asked him to slow the boat so that she could get a small shiny object which was floating on top of the water. And when she caught it, it turned out to be a small icon of St. Phanarius in full stature. It was in good condition. It had a small, thin silver frame. This is how the great martyr St. Phanarius revealed himself to our family more than 4 generations ago. And since, he's become the family patron saint. Years later, the entire family was kicked out from Constantinople by the Turks. And blessed Orthodoxos took the heartbroken family to Athens. My grandmother was a teenager, and they left behind everything: their homes, their friends, their business, most of their belongings, and they had to start over in Athens. Don't worry, my child, as long as we have our icons, everything will be all right by the saints' intercessions. The port was mobbed with refugees from Turkey looking for places to live. And one lady came to her great-grandmother and told her about a small house she was willing to rent for the right price. They took the woman's word and gave her some money for the house. And they were led to an abandoned coal building, a depository, like a warehouse, I guess, or a barn. The next morning, the great-grandmother said to coat the coal shed with 7 coats of whitewash, asbestos, inside and out. The coal shed became a nice little house, which the landlady wasn't too happy about. Can you imagine painting with asbestos back before you knew what it was? They painted it inside and out, 7 coats of asbestos paint. Eventually, grandmother married a man named George, and they had 3 children. One of them was my mother. Children were infants in 1941 when the Germans held siege of Athens. My grandfather and his parents, as well as all my relatives on my grandmother's side, died of starvation. Her grandmother gave away a 2-pound bag of precious stones, including diamonds, for a 5-pound bag of flour. My mother, Maria, cared for the dying grandmother. On her deathbed, she called for my mother. She said, quote, "Here, my sweet child, is the icon of St. Phanarius. Take it, he is very miracle working. Never leave him out of your sight, so he may guard you all your days." End quote. As a small boy, I remembered my mother putting her hand nervously in her pocket and mumbling some words, and always wondered about this. Then one day I asked what she was up to. She said, "I'm praying to St. Phanarius, whose icon I keep with me all the time. He helps us when we're in need." As soon as something bad or unexpected happened, she would stick her hand in her pocket and start praying in whispers. I knew the saint was answering her prayers when tears would roll down her cheeks. Quote, "Hurry, we have to go home and make the saint's pita cake to thank him," end quote. So this was my introduction to St. Phanarius. My mom says that since his grandmother pulled the icon out of the water, her great-grandmother, his miracles for our family have been so many that if we piled all the pitas on one plate, the cakes would make a mountain bigger than Olympus. I was present for some of the miracles of our patron saint. Sometimes my father would send us on vacation to Greece. And one summer he dropped us off at Kennedy Airport and then left for work. And my mom made arrangements that the ticket agent would meet us at the airport to get the luggage through. And we bought extra suitcases full of gifts and special requests for our relatives in Athens. And the travel agent didn't show up. And they were announcing the final boarding, and my mom decided to take her chances with a baggage check-in. The lady who checked the bags explained that the extra bags couldn't possibly be admitted because there was too many people on the flight, and the bags were 50 to 75 pounds over, or 70 pounds overweight. The manager came over and said that for an extra $150 to $200, they could send him on another flight. My mom was panicked, so she stuck her hand in her pocket and started praying. She begged St. Phanarius to find a way for the bags to get through. She didn't have that much money, and she didn't want to disappoint the children and the other relatives who were waiting for all the goodies. All of a sudden, a man came over and said that he'd gotten a phone call, turned to my mom and said, "Ma'am, are these bags yours?" My mom said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, come on, let's put them through, or you'll miss your flight. Have a good trip." My mom grabbed us by the hand. Quote, "Hurry, let's get on the plane and remind me to make St. Phanarius a cake as soon as we get to Grandma's," end quote. Years later, in 1994, my grandmother, Aphrodite, reposed in our care. My mom went from church to church, frantically looking for a priest to bring my dying grandmother the Holy Mysteries. She offered all kinds of money, but to no avail. At this point, we started to question the New Calendar churches. I personally only went to church when no one was there in order to venerate the icons and light the candles. On Pascha, we would go to church, receive Holy Light, and then we returned home. For years, I went from church to church with many questions which remained unanswered. In other words, he was a nominal Orthodox Christian. He didn't really go all the time and participate wholeheartedly. None of the priests of the various churches seemed very interested or able to answer any of the questions I had. But one day when I was walking home from another unsatisfactory church experience in despair, I remembered St. Phanarius, and I prayed to him inside my heart, and I said, "Great St. Phanarius, only you who finds things can find a true Christian church where my questions can be answered, so that I may find peace of heart and mind," end quote. 2 days later, I was fired from my job, or laid off. That's what it says. And I opened my apartment door, and I had an eviction notice waiting for me. At the recommendation of a priest I didn't hardly know, I found myself on a bus to Boston, to a place called the Holy Transfiguration Monastery. St. Phanarius knows best. 6 years now, the Holy Fathers of the Brookline Monastery have been the guiding light for my family and for me. As for St. Phanarius, he prays for us and helps us to find apartments, jobs, cars, and anything else we need. We are convinced the saint does not simply find lost articles, but can find almost anything we need for our salvation. The Holy Fathers at the Holy Transfiguration Monastery are always willing to accept cakes made for the intercession of St. Phanarius, especially if it happens to be chocolate. Bless our true God always in his saints. Amen. And this is Christos Macromalis, Mount Holy Springs, Pennsylvania, 2000. That's my name, Christos. Well, that's 21 minutes, so I think I'll stop there for tonight. But I hope you're liking these stories. I love them. It's good to hear that miracles still go on these days. People don't believe it, but I do. My son is a perfect example, and I've experienced many miracles myself, so I don't give up. I don't give up hope. So pray for me, a sinner. Pray for my family. And may God have mercy on us and bless us all. Amen. Over and out.